points of view, I always like to go through several examples just to see how we interact with the space. When we think about ancient theaters, and theaters in general, it is many points of view focusing on a singular point, the stage, the actor. However, there is information transmission coming from that point of view back to multiple points of view. When you think about moving forward and how we evolve the point of view, we can see it in architecture very well. Like the Church of Gesu is a very nice example, which I really like. I always talk about it. It's a beautiful combination of art, of sculpture, of painting, of architecture. And in many of these places, there is a designated point of view. In many of these churches, there is a specific stone in the pathway in the middle of the church that is slightly different color than the rest of the floor. And that's not by mistake, that's by design. That is the best point of view to appreciate the beauty of the design. In this case, for example, to appreciate the heavenly congregation. And that is not only a visual point of view, that's also auditory point of view. If you study architecture and history of architecture, you know that in order to contain certain information and in order to listen to certain conversations, architecture was developed in such a way that you can hear certain conversations from one point of the church to a different point of the church, but in a different locations you cannot hear it. So this is all point of view way of thinking. We are usually not thinking about these things so clearly. So we've been developing this type of thinking for a very, very long time. We can say even from the beginning, from the first stories. Now, we always try to develop technologies that simulate environment most of the time. Like when you think about early storytelling in the caves, where you would have torches, a lit fire being moved to create shadows, to create some interactive or active environment. Then you're in the theater, where you would have interaction as well with between the audience and the actor. Then with the churches, when you have the point of view specific in order to experience the grand design. As we move forward, we start implementing more and more technology to create this sense of immersion, and we will talk about immersion and immersive technologies. The panoramas were part of history which was very interesting. Because these were huge buildings where they had to employ new understanding of perspective in order to create paintings that were distorted basically, but when viewed from certain positions, they were completely all right regarding how perspective works for us. So we've been creating this type of technologies, and we've been thinking about talking in these terms. Then going further into immersion and point of view, we started evolving into more screen-based media. And screen-based media is limited in a lot of things, specifically because it limits how the body relates to the space. It is a very singular direction of interaction. But it can work very well in some instances. For example, think about how cinema works. You remove yourself from your daily life, you enter into a designated space, into some magical circle where different rules apply. All the auditory and the visual informations you get are from a singular source that is completely disjointed from the context that you're in outside of the space. Of course, unless people talk inside and speak on the phone, right? And we've been thinking about these things and about using these technologies for immersive design much earlier than we think. I really like these two examples, the early Sensorama and Sword of Damocles, which were developed in the 50s and the 60s. And these are the first instances of virtual augmented reality. The example on the right, Sword of Damocles, it's this huge contraption which is connected to a headset that can see through the space, and it projects a wireframe cube into the existing environment. It's completely the same as we have augmented reality today, 60-something years before. Of course, it didn't have sensors for tracking, for placing objects. You know, we've moved forward, but the principle of projecting something on a head-mounted display that overlays the information that we see through the display is already in motion for a long time. That's me, when I had a longer hair. I really like Asia for immersive technologies because they don't shy away. My experience is that in Europe it has a very serious view for how we present ourselves outside. So you always look goofy in VR. You know, you don't know what's happening, you're flailing, people are laughing at you taking pictures. The Far East is more open to making fun out of yourself in the public. It is all right. So I see it technologically, that these technologies work much better there. I see it. Here we are 4 people going into giant mecha robots in space together, fighting with different 4 people. So you see, these technologies have gotten into entertainment, into a lot of different things. Now, when we think about engaging information, we usually think that the technologies we have right now are principally different than anything we've done before. And that's not entirely true. These pictures, standing one next to each other, are a very interesting view of how we engage with information, especially when we talk about screen-based media. Papers are nothing else but a screen-based media. So are phones. They have more information, but in principle they're the same. And of course there is some interactivity that you can include. However, we've been dealing with information like this for a very long time. And in media theory there is this understanding that we have departed from immersive content, or immersive content fell down significantly in the percentage of how much there it is in our daily life. And now we are coming back to the attempt to reintroduce immersive content in our daily work. It will take time, but that paradigm shift must happen if we want to have more immersive content, not for itself, but for the benefits that immersive content gives. We think much better, by the way, when we relate things spatially, in space. Because we understand what relates to what, and it's something similar, you know, the memory palace? The principle of the mnemonic technique? There is a reason why it exists. So when you see something in space relating to other objects, also distance, you remember it much better. And you think about it much better. And Lev Manovich has been talking about this in media theory and how we have departed from the screen, the rectangular screen, the surface, which has its own, he calls it hegemony. So it has a control that imposes on you. It is pretty much, this is what you have to see, not what is outside of it. And that's good for curatorship, right? You don't want to really see everything. You want to focus on stuff. But it also limits, as I told you, how we communicate. So he talks about that the screen has died, that we have deconstructed the screen. And this is, of course, a discussion that goes from the 60s when we started with expanded cinema much more directly. And this understanding that we are engaging with the spatial information again, more and more in the 90s, already took hold. Now, of course, we have VR, AR, and although it's not a mainstream, it's sort of like early adoption, we see the principle in play. And we know that there are applications where certain technologies work very, very well. They don't work everywhere. We had a discussion with Milan on our way here. There's no panacea technology like this. So like this is going to work everywhere. No. Things work for specific applications. Technologies work for specific applications. Storytelling included. Now, thinking about stories, there is of course the monomyth. We all know the monomyth. We know Joseph Campbell. It is this idea that there is a story structure that repeats all across cultures. The idea, so Joseph Campbell was an anthropologist who did analysis of a wide array of myths, and he found a repeating structure. In short, it goes: a hero in his village or a safe location has to do something because of reasons, danger. He says no. There is a wise character, a guide, who comes and says you have to do this. He says no. Then there is a change of the circumstances. There is an apocalypse. There is the giant comes. There is failing harvest, whatever. The sky falls. It doesn't matter. So he leaves his safe place and goes into the other world, which can be a lot of different things. And then this character is set with a set of challenges. And at first, the character fails. But then the guide helps him to find something that he needs, usually in the form of a weapon of some sort or an item of some sort, some artifact. And then the character faces the main boss of this minigame. He's victorious, takes something from this great evil that brings it back to the village, to the environment where he came from, and using that award that he won, he fixes the situation of the village. And in the process, the character understands something more about themselves, develops some new abilities, so forth, so on. This is a structure that we all inherently understand. It can go in a very different ways, and you can find a lot of structures like these. So Kurt Vonnegut, famous writer, he talks about these 8 structures, and he talks about that these are the 8 structures that exist all across storytelling. It is questionable if that's true or not. Some other authors have their own approach, but if you look at these stories, you can always find pattern of storytelling. And for us, this is important, because usually when we talk about historical storytelling in historical context or regarding cultural heritage, objects, locations, and events, usually we talk about limited time if we consider broad audience, right? So you have a very limited time to engage with the viewer, with the listener, whoever, right? So for us, it's important to locate which are the hooks in the story structures that we want to tell and employ them in order for the information that we want to send to transmit to the people to move intuitively for them. If they think too much about how you're telling the story, you're failing. It has to go very, very fast. And this is why we employ certain patterns that are inherent to us. We are trained to think in ways like this. Now, usually museums and cultural institutions really dislike TikTok reels and short format video. Again, I think this is a cultural thing. Locally here, I think we have this, I mean regionally, we have this desire to be perceived as serious and important. And we consider anything that is remotely funny as something that goes against that goal. I took several examples here, which I'm going to look at. If you want to analyze how to best engage audience digital in short video format, I strongly suggest you go to Rijksmuseum and how they deal with engaging audiences in very different ways. Now, the best way to do it is just go to their hashtag and see what's up there. So there are very different types of content. If you see here, there also most of the content doesn't come from them. So what they do is they engage with influencers, cultural influencers specifically. They engage with different projects where you can have cross-sharing, and they produce content very similar to this.
Why is the night watch so unusual? Squint and look through your eyelashes. Who do you see? Exactly. This girl and this lieutenant. They're in the spotlight. This use of light was extremely unusual for group portraits. You had to put everyone in the same light. You had to paint everyone.
And there is an explanation.
To hell with rules, Rembrandt thought. To him,
listen to the tone of the conversation. The hell with rules. A museum, a serious thing.
Light and dark contrast made him world famous.
So,
now look at the weapon of the lieutenant. The musket here and the spear in the back. They form three lines that draw your eyes to the center of the
this is a
painting.
1 minute video.
The same happens on the left. Done on purpose, for sure. It's probably to point out the most important figures in the painting. But if you shift your focus to the left, this painting hides a secret. Here, just behind the standard bearer, there's a man wearing a beret hiding. Does he look familiar to you? Indeed, this might be Rembrandt himself.
So packed with information. At no point you heard about in ear something something this painting. No. It was no. It engages with the audience in a little bit how to call it, yellow journalism. You know, yeah, in a trivia way, but it packs a lot of information regarding visual storytelling. So it teaches you structure. This is how he uses. These are the spotlights. Why are these the spotlights? These are the lines he uses to structure the entire painting. It talks about, okay, this is the cultural context of the time where you had to focus on these and these and these people, but hell with rules. Shock, right? And we see it in the cultural industries and institutions that this type of conversation is a little bit like iffy, but it doesn't have to be. Like, this video works very, very well if you want to engage with young people. Very, very well, because as we talked about, you have to figure out the context, where they are, how they speak, and also the language of the medium. You can easily put like 20-minute video on YouTube, but someone will share this. They will not share a 15-minute video on TikTok. So there is this type of things that you have to be. Look at this thing. First photobomb ever.
First photobomb ever? Rembrandt, master painter, chiaroscuro king, and yes, a photobomber. In the Night Watch, Rembrandt captured a lineup of well-paying militiamen.
So they use a little bit of shock value to analyze the photo, as you would the painting, as you would also have with a curator or art historian. But the angle is photobomb. So it trivializes it a bit, but it uses this clickbaity way of talking, and it works. And if Rijksmuseum can do it, everyone can do it. And you can see this also in other places, in other museums throughout the world. They also have different type of content, but maybe we can just check the. Let's see. Some of their official content is also with curators that talk about what is happening. But also you have these type of things. Look at the views, the view counts. So you can employ the same amount of logic regarding viral content, regarding marketing strategies, regarding short format storytelling for vast audiences that you would do otherwise, for any different type of product. They're not different. A giant bunny walks in front of the paintings and they talk about something. I would just highlight this website. This is a very good source of information. Museum Next is a very good source of information because they give good overview of best practices in general. Like to see what's current, how they do things, what type of content there is. For example, people that are employed, that do certain information in a certain way, so you can learn about the formats themselves. And you can see what works. The beautiful thing is that you can see the view count. You can see, aha, this works, this doesn't work. It's very simple. And look at these old people talking about whatever they're doing here. Of course, all sorts of bumps of the V&A. So you can really go into many different directions, and I urge you to be more free in this if you get the chance. Advocate for it because it resonates with people. So, in short, these are the two extremes of the spectrum. I always put this sentence here because I think it puts everything together. Extended reality is a state of technologically mediated first-person embodiment into a narrative. So it takes you and it puts you into an experience. On one side is virtual reality, which shuts us from the immediate environment completely and creates this sense of telepresence, meaning it transports you into a different location. And then we interact with that space. And virtual and augmented reality, which takes digital objects and inserts them into the environment that you can see. So everything in between happens as well. We are using augmented and virtual reality, although the terms are very flimsy. They mean different things, and the definitions are fuzzy a little bit, so they overlap for a lot of stuff. But in the extremes, when we talk about AR, we know we talk about, I'm going to use a phone or I'm going to use glasses to use maybe an application or something, and I go somewhere and I interact with the world. When I use VR, I put something that hides the world around me. That's more or less the rough part of it. Regardless of what it is, two main principles. 360 environment, what we talked about, we are dispersing, we are dissolving, we are deconstructing the 2D screen. We're not interacting with information in a 2D screen anymore. We put things around us, because that's the natural way of how we exist in the world. We have been using 2D screens extensively. How long are you sitting on a computer throughout the day? Or on a phone?
10 hours.
10 hours? And you're working on an archaeological site. You're working for 8 hours. When you have a break, you look on your phone. Maybe you have some overtime. You go home. You still watch your phone. Then you put a video game to play, or you watch a film, right? So we are dealing with 2D information and 2D based media most of our waking hours. But now we have technology that makes our interaction with information much more natural. And of course, the other principle is agency. What do you give people to do in that space? We'll skip these just to get to examples that it's nice to explain, to be sure that we have the time. All of this is concerning with the concept of presence. What you want to do, even if you're telling a story, you know, when someone tells a good story and someone says, like, he told it so good, it felt like I was there. I was present in the story, or I could see it as this person was telling a story. Now we're using technologies and storytelling techniques, we can much more easily create this sense of presence. Because what we know from neurocognitive sciences is that when people feel immersed and present into whatever they're doing, they retain information much longer, they understand it much better, and they relate to it much more directly. So it's a better storytelling tool in general. When we talk about technologies, most of the times when you see something now in the context of AR, you will see this marker-based AR, where you will have an object, a card that has the coordinates tied to it, then you see it through a device, you add a virtual object, a digital object, and then you present it on a viewing screen. So however you move, it always relates to the coordinated system that is given to it. That's a very, very simple direct principle. We use it all the time now. Although now with improved computer vision, we will move, especially AI computer vision, we will move much faster in just putting objects out there, because the system will understand the physics of the space much better. You don't have to use only that. You can use body movement, and this is, for interactivity, this is beautiful, especially location-based interactivity, where you would have sensors and movement of people creates interaction with some content. It works very, very well, and people always love this. In this case, this guy made a hand tracking software where you can write as you would write, like on a with your finger, and if you want to erase it, you just do this. So it programs natural movements that we already do into the digital space. This is a work of mine that I did a long time ago in Denmark, where I used facial tracking to turn the face into an instrument. Basically, you could create poetry and music depending on your gestures, facial gestures, so you could play with it. You can take this idea and put it in many different things. Hopefully we will get to this situation where we migrate the phone to AR glasses. We're moving in this direction with miniaturization, with better technology and better design. We will get here. I don't want to predict anything, but I think fairly soon. This is principle that was applied to smartphone glasses, to smart glasses, already 10 years ago, that you can buy in a shop. So now Meta has a partnership with Ray-Ban. So they're moving in this direction more and more and more and more. the thing is about technology, it has to be something that's easily available and easily usable. And this comes down to how do you apply technology in specific locations. The more complex the technology, you have people that need to deal with maintaining it, service, onboarding, and usability. So usually this is what I always make a mistake. When I create something, I always like to make something where I have to be present there. Don't do that. Make it run itself. This entire discussion about how the technology works and how point of views work, I really like this image because it shows how goggles see the world. And think about what we talked about theater, and think about what we talked about point of view. In a very simple technology. And you see something relates just to the art, and it discusses about how it was made. Something relates to the historical elements. Something relates to the consequences of the economy. You can really make very wide context because you allow the user to go around the space and interact with different segments. And you can see it's a long hallway. You need some screens, you need some sensors, but this is doable with acceptable budget. So just to give you insight into technology and how they did it. So how they took the image, not necessarily how they did it with the software in the back. There is this technique called analytical imaging, where you basically take fingerprint, they call it fingerprint of the image. And the way it works is it doesn't only take photographic image, it also assigns each pixel mathematical values. Very similar to what we talked about in photogrammetry. It gives it values of color, of texture, of a lot of things. And what it happens is that they're scanning strips of it. And then they put them together and they create huge images. So you can zoom in crazy amount of times. There is this one presentation, there's a TED Talk by Sarah Kinderdine where she explains more about this technology, and she zooms on a large screen to the nits of the fiber of the material on which things are painted on. And you can see them like a mesh. So it's such a powerful imaging technique. Very, very high resolution, because it doesn't just take a photo. It takes a photo for reference, but you cannot zoom indefinitely. Another way to interact with these environments, let's see if we have internet. Yeah, let's try. Maybe not. We'll see if something speaks. This is also work by Jeffrey Shaw, where they recorded the Mogao grottos in Dunhuang, which are caves where a lot of Buddhist monks lived. And there are thousands of these caves. And due to atmospheric reasons, they start to lose color. There are these magnificent paintings inside. So what they did is they entered there and they scanned them using LiDAR technology and recreated them in a 3D space. But the way they presented them was to simulate your exploration inside the cave. So they have this wall that has just some images, this black and white wall, and then using the sensors here to triangulate where your position is, basically you can use it as a viewing window and move into the cave itself. It works very, very nice. Unfortunately, the internet is not. But you can see you can see the principle, right? Now, talking about clay weaver, and something that I did as part of this residency in Changsha, China, it was about interacting with the local heritage, which was pottery, one of the local heritage. So what I was really interested in was in this production of Taoistic burial pots. In some extreme cases, Taoist monks, when they are about to pass, they enter these pots, they're closed off and they're put usually in a wall. And maybe you have read information when they discover these huge pots into the walls. And they meditate for a long time and slowly mumify. So we found a place that produces these pots, and I bought one. And what I did was a virtual reality experience using this pot, where you would be transposed into a point of view of a small blob of clay while you're inside the physicality of the pot. And this young artist makes a pot out of you, basically. And in the end, the physicality of the burial pot in which you're in and the visual information of the small pot that you are made, they collide and they become synchronous information. And at the same time, like why did this at all? He has like an internal monologue, like a poetry based on Lao Tzu and his concept about strength and weaknesses and death and life. Basically that when something becomes strong, it dies, in short. And when something is weak, it's flexible and it can grow. And you listen to this while he makes this beep, 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 small pot out of you, and then you take out the headset and you find yourself in the finished burial pot. So it was a very interesting experience, and this is the center where we presented it along 6 other experiences. It had a very huge success. And it works for a lot of people. That's me asking a small child, this is his parents, these are his parents, is he okay? And he loved it, and that was very interesting. The point why I'm, and when coming back to this and thinking about how well this approach worked or it didn't work, or what I learned about it. The experience was nice, it worked well, it achieved the sensorial effect that I liked. It talked about what I liked. It was more flexible in that context because it was first media art and then it was a heritage conversation. But it's a virtual reality, and it means that only one person can experience it at the same time, at a time, which limits significantly the amount of people that can go through it. However, if you make your experience more interesting for the people outside, they interact with it in a different way. So although there is only one person experiencing this thing, there are several other people taking pictures, reading more about it. And when they get out of the pot, they start explaining. There's always 100% of the time, they explain, the others show them pictures, they share it, so it becomes a conversation that grows outside of the space. And I don't have that photo. I've sent it somewhere. So I would say always try to make your works to function in a broader sense. Make them more friendly for communication on social media. This work, I wanted to show you, there was like a design we did, expanded design. We talked about introducing this into a museum in Munich, where we would make a fake archaeological dig site. I wanted to show you the drawing of the entire design of the space. So it would be a fake archaeological dig site inside the museum. where this pot would be uncovered, and you can walk on planks, and there would be excavation equipment and all of that, and you could go inside the pot, have the experience. However, I really wanted to make this more open. So there were other ways you can interact with it. There was AR element, where you would have scientists working there, talking about the discovery. They would ask you to do certain things. And also you would have physical media like papers, like a new discovery found, no. So while you wait, you read about the context of it. So you think about the entire experience process and all the phases of it, like the onboarding, broader AR experience, more focused, more intense virtual reality experience, and the entire setup of a fake dig site. Of course, budgeting and all of that plays into account.